Hello and welcome to the first broadcast of The Scott Smith Show. I'm your host, Scott Smith. Coming to you today, discussing Biden's first solo press conference, Democrats seeking to destroy the filibuster. We talk about the Colorado and Atlanta shootings, a scantily reported story on Hunter Biden, senators who discriminate, and what exactly is going on in Oakland, California. But first, you wake up in the morning and you see your country changing before your eyes and you wonder how it got this way. You've been watching the news and paying attention, but the next thing you know, people are renaming high schools that are named after Lincoln and Washington, and students are being taught that the color of their skin does, in fact, matter. Kids in the first grade are learning that they might not be the gender that they think they are, and we're somehow now concerned about the gender of a plastic potato, while Dr. Seuss books suddenly contain harmful depictions. You see an interview with Dr. Fauci telling you that you can't go see your loved ones even after you're vaccinated, and that no matter what, you better keep wearing that mask. Let me take a guess. You think that you're the crazy one because you just want your old life back. You think that you're the crazy one because you don't believe that America is systemically racist. You know that there are some racist people in this country, but you are not one of them, and you don't support the people that are. But you're concerned. You've now been told that if you're not actively anti-racist, that you are, in fact, a racist. You see through the hypocrisy. The media calls the Super Bowl gatherings in the streets of Tampa a super spreader event, but they wouldn't dare call mass gatherings for social justice anything more than a peaceful protest. They feign outrage over an unmasked face, but remain silent over a minority whose business was burned down in the name of supposedly helping minorities. You just want things to go back to how they were. Seeing your family and friends, people helping other people caring about other people's character, not the color of their skin or who they voted for. But you are told that you're the crazy one for wanting this. Wanting to have a meal with your grandparents and thinking that's okay makes you a conspiracy theorist. Being willing to take a risk that you find personally acceptable is akin to being a mass murderer. You are told that you're the racist because you want black people to succeed. You just don't think that affirmative action and racist policies that hurt other people is the way. You don't think that destroying our history helps anyone. You believe that if you truly think something is racist, you teach it and you show it as an example of how not to act. You don't just simply try to cancel it. You believe that transgender people should be allowed to live their lives, but you don't think that 8-year-olds should be allowed to decide on their own to take medication to alter their hormones or stop puberty, and yet somehow you are the bigot for thinking this. Now, if any of what I just said rings true with you, then this show might be for you. I think that what's happening now is that people on the woke left or the far left, however you want to view them, what they're doing is they're taking advantage of the fundamental goodness of the American people. Think about it this way. An average person, they don't want to be viewed as a racist. They don't want to be viewed as a bigot. So they just go along with this nonsense. They don't agree with what's going on. They don't think that, like I said, making not wanting to let an 8-year-old choose to transition their gender medically makes you a bigot if you don't want to let that happen. But it's just easier to not say anything and go along with it. Because time after time, we see that these purple-haired activists get their Twitter mob all revved up and ready to go, and they get together 1,000 people and they send an email to your employer, and somehow these powerless clowns that really should hold no influence over anyone now just got you fired from your job for holding a non-controversial position. So that's what I think's going on. I think that they don't like our society. I think that they are trying to remake it in their mold, and the only way to do that is to break it down. And realistically, people are going to have to speak up and say, hey, this is ridiculous. I'm a good person, but this is ridiculous. This isn't the way. And that's what we are going to do on this show. We are going to bring you the stories that the mass media doesn't, that they ignore, that they twist to fit their narrative, and we are going to talk about them in an honest and verifiable way. So, without anything further, let's get into the first episode of The Scott Smith Show. Thanks for being here. All right, everyone. So Joe Biden had his first solo press conference, and I'm not going to hold the typical right-wing opinion that it was a total disaster, because he did get through it, but we got to be honest, we set a pretty low bar, which probably isn't the right thing to do, but make no mistake, he did plenty of stumbling, and he was reading from notes, and he had a picture book of reporters, but you listen to Joe for yourself. Cut one.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done. And if we have to, if there's complete lockdown and chaos as a consequence of the filibuster, then we'll have to go beyond what I'm talking about. Okay, hang on. Sorry. Oh, Miss Kim.
So basically, he starts rambling and a question about getting things done, and I guess he seemingly kind of forgets his thought, but then says a bit more nonsense, and then he just says, anyway, and he goes to his little picture book of reporters to see who's next on his numbered list. And that's actually interesting. Photos came out showing what Joe Biden was referencing, and he did have like a picture book of reporters, and they were numbered. So the reporters were pre-picked and in a specific order by somebody, whether or not it was a staffer or Joe Biden himself. They did pre-pick those reporters. So think of that what you will. Does that mean that, they went to some friendly people and said, hey, maybe you want to give us a little heads up on what you might be thinking about maybe asking? We don't know, but interesting to note, especially when you contrast that with Donald Trump, who would frequently just kind of go out there and let them lob crap at him, and whatever they had to say, whoever it was, he just kind of went with it. It wasn't very, put it this way, a Trump press conference is not a very guarded event. And another interesting thing is it seemed like he was reading from cards. And look, fair enough, again, you want to be accurate, but he seemed to heavily rely, and even on some of the foreign policy, he seemed to heavily rely on note cards. And look, I want the president to be strong. I want us to have a strong leader of America, because that's the leader of the free world. And if you can't even remember, you need cards to remember some of your more basic policies, I just find that a little bit concerning. But what can we do at this point? And I just want to know, because it's something that came up a lot during this press conference was about transparency regarding the border crisis. And does anybody remember what Jen Psaki, circle back, Jen Psaki said on her first day in the briefing room? Cut to.
When the president asked me to serve in this role, we talked about the importance of bringing truth and transparency back to the briefing room.
So truth and transparency back into the briefing room, but the Biden border crisis is actually getting so big that even CNN and MSNBC can't ignore it. And they actually had to ask for access to the migrant facilities in the briefing room because the Biden administration did not want to provide access. And that was never a problem under Obama, Trump, anybody. As far as I know, the press have never been denied access to these facilities. But let's listen to what Jen Psaki had to say about that. Cut 3.
The question on the border. The access being granted today for the pool is of a facility that is aspirational, of where you want to move these children. Mm-hmm. What about access to the facilities where there is overcrowding and there is an actual problem? Why was this one chosen over those?
We're also open to providing access there, and this is just the first step in a process of providing greater access to the media.
So she gives this ridiculous answer of, oh, well, we want to do the transparency, but there's a process of many steps we must take to provide the access, but we are committed to access. It's just ridiculous. And it's a meaningless thing. And in a way, I feel bad for her because this probably means that she's gotten no clear directive from the president or people that are immediately above her. But it's not hard. When she says, we would like to provide you with transparency and access, it's not that hard. You're in charge. Your boss can do it anytime he wants. All he has to do is say, hey, let them in. Stop telling them that they can't come in. So I'm not sure what this process is that she's referring to. The secretary for DHS tried to suggest on the Sunday shows that don't forget, we are in the middle of a pandemic. So I guess that means one reporter can't go into the migrant facility. No. My point, though, is that this actually became such a huge issue that NBC's Kristen Welker asked about it at the press conference. Here is what she had to say, cut 4.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Given the conditions that were just laid out at the migrant facilities at the U.S. border, will you commit to allowing journalists to have access to the facilities that are overcrowded moving forward?
I will commit when my plan very shortly is underway to let you have access to not just them, but to other facilities as well.
Okay, and just to be clear, how soon will that be, Mr. President?
I don't know, to be clear.
So, to be clear, it's completely my decision, and I have no idea. And basically, what he's saying is, I'll commit to showing you the facilities after I've fixed this mess, because he knows it's horrible in there. He doesn't want people to see it, especially because the whole kids in cages thing is literally what started the media going after Trump, calling him like that he was the next Hitler. It had to do with the kids in cages. And now Biden does not want the American people to see what's going on in these facilities. And I think it's interesting because the media constantly said that Trump was trying to just end the media. He wanted no news but state news, and yet he gave them more access than anybody else. He was their enemy because he literally just didn't like them, and for good reason sometimes. But he gave them access. He called on people that he knew didn't like him, then they would ask gotchas and tough questions. But because he made fun of them, oh, he's destroying the free press. Now, Biden, he's a nice guy who just won't answer any questions or give access, but there's no mean tweets, so, we're all good here now. It's all right. It's all right. There's no mean tweets. I don't even think Joe Biden tweets for himself. I'm sure that there's a communications staff doing the Joe Biden Twitter account. Just to be clear, we've gone now from kids in cages to kids in cages with COVID, or some have called them cellophane cells. One of the funnier parts about this is that the Biden administration keeps trying to claim that this is somehow due to Trump's policies. Don't forget, Joe Biden ended Remain in Mexico, which meant that people would wait in the country while their asylum claim was processed. Joe Biden ended Safe Third Country, which basically means, hey, if you say you're claiming asylum and you're trying to flee persecution or some other circumstance, if you are coming to America and you pass through another country on the way, you have to apply for asylum there first, which I think is only logical. And he ended catch and release. So he made it clear that he was welcome to this, but some people in the media are actually going along with this line that the Trump admin just left them a mess, which is not true if you look at the numbers. Maybe if really low illegal immigration is a mess, then yeah, I guess he left them a mess. Now, if people on the left want to understand why people like Donald Trump, it's because he does things that other leaders just wouldn't do. And I think I have a perfect example of this, cut 6.
Where was Nancy Pelosi today?
The then president, had withdrawn the money that was allocated for the Northern Triangle. That was a mistake, and we have to restore that. They withdrew the money to punish those countries.
Mr. President, did you withdraw money from Central America to punish them?
Absolutely, that's right. On that, I agree with her. First time in a long time, years, that I've agreed with her. We were paying them $500 million a year. Nobody knew what they were doing with the money. When we got somebody, we captured a bad MS-13 or group, we'd bring them back to the country, and they wouldn't take them. And I said, what are we doing? How much money do we give them? We pay them $500 million a year. I said, stop paying the money immediately. We stopped paying. They called the following day. They said, we'd love to have MS-13 come back into our country. Please send them immediately, and we will not be sending any more bad people. And we then got along very well with them. So she's absolutely right. They abused us in so many different ways. They wouldn't take prisoners and murderers back, and we didn't want them in our country. So we'd bring them back. They wouldn't take them. I stopped paying the $500 million that we were wasting on giving it to them. As soon as I did that, they immediately agreed to take back everybody. They said it would be a great honor to take them back. Please send them immediately.
This is what people liked. If you're on the left and you're listening and your goal is to prevent another Donald Trump, this is what people liked. They did not like that our politicians, who think that they are better than us, send money to foreign countries like our tax dollars are just worthless, even if it's $1 per taxpayer. He said, if you don't do the right thing, the gravy train is over. We're not sending you more money. And no one even asks, why do we send the money? And if the conditions are so bad, even with us sending money to these other countries, and we just take in the migrants anyway, why do we do it in the first place? What is the money for? So that's not something that traditionally politicians have been willing to do. And it's pretty logical. We've got he says we capture a gang member of some sort, and then some other country that we give $500 million a year to says, we don't want him back. He's like, yeah, how about we not give you that free money anymore? It's so simple. It's that easy. People, they just don't want to do it. These politicians, they have no interest in taking control over our tax money that we send to foreign countries to do things that are in our best interest. And this is one of the things, I promise you, this is one of the things that people liked about him the most. So, I don't want to keep going on in this, but kids in Flint, Michigan couldn't drink their water until 2019, but maybe if we just pretend like Flint was a foreign country, we can get them some money and some aid. It's incredible to me, the things that we overlook in our country while we send hundreds of millions of dollars to other countries for seemingly no return. All right, we've seen a lot of focus on the filibuster right now, which is the rule to end debate on the Senate floor, to take a piece of legislation to a vote. And to end a filibuster, to end debate, you need 60 votes, which effectively means in order to pass something, you need at least 60 votes for it. And Democrats, of course, want to do away with this rule so they can cram their agenda down the country's throat with absolutely zero bipartisan support. And this is an important topic. Biden says that he might want to go back to the talking filibuster, but he believes it is a Jim Crow relic, basically like everything else now. It's racist. Everything you don't like is racist. So that's where we're at. And if we had a functioning press, they would ask why his vice president, who's black, used the filibuster so much to block bills. Biden even said that his most important speech was in defense of the filibuster. Take a listen, cut 7.
President Lyndon Johnson, the master of the Senate, put it this way: in this country, a majority may govern, but it does not rule. The genius of our constitutional and representative government is the multitude of safeguards provided to protect minority interest. The Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker in 1993 wrote that compromising the filibuster, quote, would topple one of the pillars of American democracy, the protection of minority rights from majority rule. The Senate is the only body in the federal government where these minority rights are fully and specifically protected, end of quote. Simply put, the nuclear option would eviscerate the Senate and turn it into a second House of Representatives. If that were the case, we'd have a unicameral body. It is not only a bad idea, it upsets the constitutional design and does a disservice to the country.
Now, I played that whole clip because I agree with him. And I don't care who has the majority or the minority. I agree, always. And I'll get to why a little bit later on. But it wasn't just Joe Biden that defended the filibuster. President Barack Obama did the same thing. Take a listen here, cut 8.
But the American people sent us here to be their voice. They understand that those voices can at times become loud and argumentative, but they also hope that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And at the end of the day, they expect both parties to work together to get the people's business done. What they don't expect is for one party, be it Republican or Democrat, to change the rules in the middle of the game so that they can make all the decisions while the other party is told to sit down and keep quiet. The American people want less partisanship in this town, but everyone in this chamber knows that if the majority chooses to end the filibuster, if they choose to change the rules and put an end to democratic debate, then the fighting and the bitterness and the gridlock will only get worse. Now, I understand that Republicans are getting a lot of pressure to do this from factions outside the chamber. But we need to rise above the ends justify the means mentality, because we're here to answer to the people, all of the people, not just the ones that are wearing our particular party label.
Now, Republicans could have trashed the filibuster in 2016 for legislation, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And I'm sure that there was pressure from some groups to trash the filibuster so that they could sort of push through the Republican agenda with no Democrat input. But they did not do it. The Republicans did not do that. My concern now is that Democrats are acting like they have a mandate. The mandate means like they know that they have the support of the majority of the country and that they need to get these things done at all costs. Except this is the slimmest House majority since, I think, World War II. And the Senate, really technically, there is no majority. It's a 50-50 split Senate with Kamala Harris doing the tie-breaking vote. But they're acting as though they just won a supermajority of the House and the Senate. And that concerns me, because they can do things like create a welfare state. And it's a fundamental grift of the Democratic Party, right? Vote for us and we'll give you free stuff, but you got to keep voting for us or the gravy train won't keep rolling. Now, in another stunning moment of hypocrisy, Democrats used the filibuster to block Tim Scott's police reform bill. Tim Scott is an African-American senator from South Carolina. And in the heat of the George Floyd protests and riots, he drafted a police reform bill as a black man that he thought would bring useful change. And the Democrats used the filibuster to stop a vote on Tim Scott's police reform bill. But now they're crying, oh, the filibuster, it's super racist and it's got to go. And that's like the new go-to now. They call anything that's bad, it's a relic of the Jim Crow era, and it's got to go. Any rule that they don't like is racist and an old relic. But now here's Obama at John Lewis's funeral in 2020 saying now we should get rid of the filibuster that he previously defended, claiming, again, Jim Crow relic, racist. Cut 9.
And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do.
So, if it's such a racist relic, why did you use it and love it so much? And I just want to note that last year, Democrats used the filibuster 327 times. They blocked plenty of Republican legislation. All right, so all this outrage now about, oh, we can't have a party ruled by the minority and we can't do anything because they're going to block it with the filibuster. They say this after they just spent the past however many years blocking much of the Republican agenda using the filibuster. And one other thing I want to mention. So that clip of Obama was from John Lewis's funeral, and I think that was mid-2020. So I just want you to note, by the way, the hypocrisy of these people. You can't hold a funeral for your family member because of the pandemic. But John Lewis, no. He's important. We can have an indoor funeral for him with as many people as we need to attend. That's fine. If you're important, the rules don't apply to you. We can hold your funeral, but your loved ones that are grieving over someone who might have died in your family, no funeral for you. And don't get me wrong, John Lewis was an important man. But if the pandemic really was as dangerous as they claim, then why would they really be breaking their own rules to hold this funeral? And I just find it a bit sickening how they go on and on about the gatherings and it was too dangerous and how you can't do it for your family. But now when one of ours passes away, oh, well, we have to hold a funeral, obviously. Last thing I'm going to mention on this topic. Why is the filibuster important? I think that this is something that was fundamentally understood by the people who created these bodies. They knew that there is no stability in a slim majority ruling over a slim minority. Now, what do I mean by that? This country is split pretty close to 50-50 in terms of its politics and what people like and don't like and what they support and what they don't support. And I think that the people who created the Senate, our founders and the people who shaped the rules of the Senate, they understood that it would be very destabilizing to have 51% of the country make the rules for the other 49%. Basically, gridlock in Washington, in my opinion, is a good thing. It means that the system is working. If the American people truly believed in an idea or they believed that something was the right thing to do, then that party would have enough control to pass that legislation with a supermajority. But if they don't, the Senate is what brings the temperature down, allows for debate, and things that maybe don't really have the supermajority support of the country, they go to die. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. If anything, I'd be in favor of strengthening the threshold to pass legislation, because I think it's just really destabilizing when you try to impose your beliefs on the other half of the country. You know, if we're talking like 70-30, then you know what? Yeah, you guys, you're in the minority. Most people want this, but we're talking about the kind of split that we see right now. If you just cram crap down people's throats that they don't want, and you cram your agenda down, it is just going to keep dividing us. And that old quote of, divided we fall, it's going to be true if we keep going down this hyper-partisan path. So I think that this is actually really important, because it would truly mean that you could start to have a slim majority rule over a slim minority, and you don't know what could happen. Some people are not going to be okay with that. Some people are not going to be okay with living under the rules of a 51% majority. So that's my piece on the filibuster. I said my piece on it. I think it's very important. I think we need to maintain it, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully they don't go completely wild, getting rid of something that they themselves used 327 times last year. All right, so I'm sure you heard about the recent tragedy that took place in Colorado, but this is showing us once again how the left can never let a crisis go to waste, and just how race-obsessed they truly are. And honestly, I'm not even sure which is more toxic right now. So Mina Harris, which I believe is Kamala Harris's niece, tweeted this. The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country. And she deleted that, and then she said, I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive and the fact that the majority of mass shootings in the U.S. are carried out by white men. Another blue checkmark leftist tweeted, a white man walked into a grocery store in Boulder, killed 10 people, and was apprehended by the police and walked out of the building completely unharmed. Right down the road, police killed Elijah McClain while he apologized for not doing anything wrong. Two different Americas. Now, the whole narrative kind of blows up here because of the assumptions that they made. And by the way, I'm pretty sure his entire leg and his hands were bleeding, and something happened. He did not come out unharmed. But I could go on with examples of this forever. They all assume that it was a white guy because the police didn't kill the guy apprehending him. Turns out he was a Syrian-born Muslim immigrant. And the injection of race into everything helps no one. And we saw this with the Atlanta shooting too. Immediately, it was a hate crime because 6 out of the 8 people who unfortunately were killed were Asian. But what if it's not? Does it even matter right now to people if it wasn't? The police said that he had a sex addiction and he saw these massage parlors as an outlet, and he wanted to eliminate the temptation that they brought. Honestly, it sounds like some kind of Criminal Minds type of thing. And you just have to apply some critical thinking. Why go driving all over the state to specific places if he just wanted to hurt Asian people generally? They found out he was supposedly going to drive to Florida to commit more of these acts. Why do that if it's just about, a race or an ethnicity? And maybe this is accurate, maybe it's not, but here's the thing that I think is dangerous, is when you just take an outcome and you assign a motive to it. You don't critically look at anything, you just say, Asian people, hate crime. Couldn't be anything else. There's no possible other explanation for it. And I want to solve the problem, right? I don't want these things to happen. But if you make everything about race, you actually don't help solve the problem. And I'll tell you why quickly. It's because you overlook what might have been the real reason. And I'm not saying that race wasn't the reason or that it couldn't possibly have been the reason. What I'm saying is that if you just always jump to the conclusion that, if a racial group was affected, then the motivation was most definitely racism, you miss out on what might be a legitimate cause for that violence, and then you can't fix it if you don't know what it was. So it's a bit of a dangerous thing, and the news even admitted that activists don't care about the motive. Listen to this, Willie Geist on Sunday Today. Cut 10.
Good to see you. Asian American leaders and activists argue race cannot be separated from incidents like the shootings in Georgia this week, no matter the motives.
So think about that. They don't care what the motive was, just the outcome. You might recall the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. That was immediately labeled as an LGBT hate crime. It turns out, we found out months later, that guy wanted to target something else and the security was too hardened. And, this psychopath said, where else can I go that there are a lot of people that's less secure? And it seems to be that he just Googled for a nightclub near him and he went and he did the killing. And he didn't even know it was an LGBT club. But that was immediately the first thing, is this was a hate crime against the LGBT community. And I just want to know, who did it help to label it that before we knew? You created all this anxiety and stress in people that felt like they were under now physical attack because of an identity. And as it turns out, that wasn't even true. Now, since all 10 of the victims of the Colorado shooting were white, can we say that was a hate crime against white people? Maybe Maybe this guy saw all this rhetoric online about whiteness being a terror, a terror on people, and he was radicalized by this, and he decided to go out and kill white people. Now, I think that's a bit ridiculous, but this is what you open up to when you go down this everything is racialized route. You're gonna make it to a point where people can actually try to make that argument, and I don't think that that's a good thing. Tribalism and identity politics could very well be our downfall, because we are all too consumed with characteristics that we generally have no control over. And then, once they realized this wasn't a case of white supremacy, it became about the gun and gun control, right? So this is how it always works. A deranged person commits a crime, and the first thing that Democrats try to do is limit law-abiding gun owners. People talk about AR-15s and assault rifles and this and that. I'm going to tell you what the real problem is, and I don't understand why nobody's talking about this. It is the background check system, literally the system itself. It's not that good. And the FBI, as it turns out, has failed us in almost all of the most recent mass shootings. Parkland, that kid was on the FBI's radar. They said protocols weren't followed. Even this guy, apparently the FBI was investigating someone close to him, and he was on their radar, but he wasn't flagged. Now, the Sutherland Springs shooting, this was a church in Texas, and this didn't get a lot of coverage, even though it was bigger than the Pulse shooting. A good guy with a gun ended it. He killed the person who came in to commit this violence on the churchgoers. So the media, they didn't really want to report on this one big time, because they didn't want to, make a national story out of a good guy with a gun saves a bunch of people. But the point is that the shooter in that case, he was actually discharged from the military for some pretty violent stuff. How was he not in the system? How was he not going to get flagged? The problem that we have is that our background check system itself is literally just not that good. It's not that not the right people are not getting background checked. The system itself needs to be fixed. And I would like to see legislation to strengthen the system, make sure that data is being put in from all different sources. And I also want to make sure that people, if there is something in there that's incorrect, that there is a timely, quick process that someone can go through legally to get it corrected. But that system should be as strong as possible. There should not be a chance to miss something in the NICS check system. But nobody talks about this. It's just, let's ban your guns, take away the AR-15s. It's the gun, not the person, right? Now, if you want to talk about the it saves just one life hypocrisy, this is the thing, especially with COVID now. If it just saves one life, and that's a fallacy in modern society, because if your standard of whether or not something is worth it is whether or not it would save a single life, we'll just all never do anything again, ever. Because there is risk inherent in life. But what I mean by this is the preventative use of firearms. And this is from the CDC. They collect this data from another company or collective, and they estimate somewhere in the range, and this is a crazy range, 60,000 to 2.5 million defensive uses of a firearm each year. And they define that as the use of a firearm to protect and defend oneself, family, others, and or property against crime or victimization. And this is the argument. I don't understand why they want you to sit back and be a good victim. And there was a case, I remember this, out of California, where a store owner was getting robbed, and he confronted the guy with a gun, and the sheriff actually came out and said, in that area, I can't remember if sheriff or local police department chief, said, we would prefer it if you didn't engage. We want you to be able to be to not get hurt and be a good witness for us in court. So basically saying, we want you to sit there and be a good little victim and hope that they don't kill you. We would prefer it if you didn't kill the criminal who was trying to rob you. We just want you to, hope that you get through it, hope they don't kill you so you can be a good witness for us in court. It's insane. Moving on to a different gun topic. This is I would say a scantily reported story from Politico, which I would hardly call right-wing. It's about some sort of conspiracy, basically, involving Hunter Biden's girlfriend at the time, who was his brother's wife before he passed, and she threw Hunter's gun into a garbage pail behind a store near a school. And Politico reports that the Secret Service stepped in to try to get the firearm transaction record from the store who he bought it from, and he refused to give it to them. And for some reason, the Secret Service inserted themselves seemingly to cover this up, but it's hard to really say. But forgetting about all that, there is one factual thing that you can definitely discern from this story. I think it's a bigger thing. On the 4473 ATF form, which is the background check for if you want to buy a gun in this country, you affirm by saying yes or no to the following question. Are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance? In order to pass the background check, you cannot answer yes to that question. The form is pretty clear about this. So what does that mean? It means that Hunter Biden lied on this form, which is a felony. Hunter Biden owns a gun illegally. Wonder what'll happen? Probably nothing. We know that he has drug problems because they've been open about this. He was discharged from the military for this. They've spoken about his addiction. So Hunter Biden illegally owns a gun. So for the Democrats that like to talk about gun laws, I just want to see if you're going to do anything now that you know for a fact that there is a person out there who lied on their background check form and owns a gun illegally. But no, nothing's going to happen. And this just creates more divisiveness. Rules for the elites and rules for normal people. Do you think you could lie on that form and be all right? I doubt it. I doubt you'd have a good outcome. All right, moving right along. Senators admitting to bias. This is another slightly less reported on story. Senator Tammy Duckworth recently stated that she was a, quote, no vote on the floor on all non-diverse nominees. You know, I will vote for racial minorities and I will vote for LGBTQ. Anybody else, I'm not voting for. Now, I don't know if this senator knows this, but in America, it's illegal to deny a person employment based on their race or gender. But, this is like a casual thing that just happens now, and it's really been a non-story. And I get it. People want diversity, but at some point you have to call this what it is. It's discrimination. I don't care who gets the job, as long as they are qualified. But many of the Democrats have attacked Republicans over opposition to what they say are Biden's nominees of color. Neera Tanden, they opposed her. Couldn't possibly be because of her vile remarks that she's made over the years on Twitter, or the fact that she actually outed an employee in a meeting who accused another employee of sexual assault at a company that she was managing. So she actually outed the girl publicly and who she was accusing. Nothing to do with that. It's only because of the color of her skin. That's the only reason. Same thing with Javier Becerra. He has zero relevant experience. He was nominated for HHS. He's not a doctor, not worked in a healthcare system. He hasn't even worked in the healthcare industry in any capacity. He's a politician and a lawyer. And the Republicans were opposing him, basically citing he has no experience to do this job for Health and Human Services. And of course, the news were like, see, it's the racist Republicans. They only oppose him because he's Hispanic. It's not good. It's not good, people. If you can't see past the race, basically what you're saying is there can be no legitimate motive for having a problem with someone if they're a minority. It can only be because they're a minority. That's the only reason you could possibly have a problem with them. And if that's where we are, it's a scary place, because now you can't legitimately hold a belief about a person or think that they're not qualified for something if they're not white. Then you just can't say it. All right, moving on to our last story. What is going on in Oakland, California? And this is from CBS News. Quote, the mayor of Oakland, California on Tuesday announced a privately funded program that will give low-income families of color in the city $500 per month with no rules on how they can spend it. So basically they're kind of trying a universal basic income, guaranteed income. To be eligible, individuals must have at least one child under the age of 18 and an income that is at or below 50% of the area median income, which is about $59,000 per year for a family of 3. And one other caveat, you can't be white. So here's a question. Does that mean that mixed race people get $250? What I don't think that these people realize is that this is the kind of thing that emboldens Republicans, because they see this as obvious discrimination. I mean, it is. You point out for what it is. It's discrimination. It's hard not to view this as racist. Even commentators on the Washington Post article, I went online and I looked at it. Even on the Washington Post website, the people in the comments were like, how is this legal? This seems pretty racist. But this is what I want you to fundamentally understand. Elites in this country want to keep us in this race warfare instead of ever going to a class warfare, instead of ever realizing how we're all being taken advantage of by the people that own the biggest companies in the country. They just want us all to keep bickering about Hispanic, Latino, black, white, Asian American. They just want us to keep going after each other so they can just keep racking in the money. And a good example quickly, the minimum wage fight. Why do you think Amazon supports the minimum wage fight? Amazon thinks, yes, we should be giving people $15 an hour. Very easy. They know they can afford it, and they know that if it gets passed, it will put more of their competition out of business. Because Amazon does everything. So a small mom and pop electronic shop or a little store here and there, they're competition for Amazon because it's very likely that Amazon has what those companies are selling and delivers to that area. I mean, they deliver everywhere. So there's no service area issue. So Amazon knows that if the minimum wage passes and increases, that more of their competition will go out of business. And then what happens? Just more people working for Amazon. The rich get richer. The middle class just keeps dwindling. I want everyone to be happy. I want people to live happily together. And I want people to succeed. But things like this, it creates racial strife and distrust. And frankly, it's going to anger people. Because, the people who are affected by this, right? If you're a white person and you're poor, sorry, no help for you. This one's only for black people. You can go trade in your white privilege card for some money somewhere. But these people feel like they've done nothing wrong. And they haven't. But they're getting discriminated against. And some people say, well, too bad. White people have had it too good for too long. But that's not really a tenable argument in a society that's looking to uplift everyone equally. And there's some more interesting examples of this, and I get it. It's private companies they can do what they want. But things like this, they create strife. Uber Eats canceled delivery fees, but only for black-owned restaurants. DoorDash gave loans and featured black-owned businesses more prominently. Yelp promoted solely black-owned businesses during the pandemic. Why is the poor white business owner any lesser? Why is there no promotion for them? Or why are you not just promoting small business in general? This kind of stuff upsets people, and you can't just say, well, boo-hoo, whitey, you've had it too good for too long. It's a valid claim. Saying that this is discrimination is a valid claim. And I don't know what you can really do about it, but again, I say to people, if you want to know why Donald Trump got into power, it's because people feel like they're getting messed with. And who's going to fix it? The Democrats certainly aren't going to try to, change any of this. So what are you left with? You're left with Donald Trump. And I worry about why racial discrimination is casually acceptable now. You say, oh no, they're just because the black business owners, historically marginalized and this, and they're just uplifting. It doesn't matter. These people, these other they didn't do anything. They are not responsible for the sins of their ancestors. We are where we are today. This is racial discrimination, and it is not good. And this is what they want. This is what the woke left wants. This is what the people, this whole anti-racist grift, that if you're not anti-racist, then you're racist. Here's a quote from Ibram X. Kendi, who's a noted anti-racism expert who thinks that we should be teaching about racial differences to toddlers. He said, "The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." There you go, black and white. That's what the anti-racist people believe. The only way that they can get theirs is by discriminating against people now, and the discrimination will only continue. Bringing you critical thinking, objectivity, rationality, and nuance, while rejecting hysteria and ignorance, I'm Scott Smith, and you're listening to The Scott Smith Show.